You really thought you could marry into this family and take what doesn't belong to you? These medical records prove exactly what kind of unstable person you are, Lauren. No judge in their right mind would let you near a single dollar of this trust. Sign the papers giving up every claim right now, or I will make sure the entire gated community knows the truth about the woman my son foolishly brought home. Hi, my name is Lauren Bennett. I am 33 years old. The words hit the quiet conference room like a door slamming shut. My mother-in-law, Diane Harper, sat across the polished table, her manicured fingers tapping the stack of documents she had just pushed toward me. My husband Ethan sat on my left, staring at his phone like the screen held the answers to every question in the room. He had not looked at me once since we walked in. I kept my hands flat on the table so nobody could see them shaking. The papers in front of me were supposed to be routine updates to the family trust. Ethan had promised me for years that the trust existed to protect both of us, that his parents wanted their only son and his wife to have security in this high-end gated neighborhood where we had bought our first home together. That promise had been the foundation we built everything on. Now Diane was using it as a weapon. She slid one page forward with one finger like she could not stand to touch it any longer than necessary. Page 4 shows the medical evaluation. It is all there in black and white. Your anxiety diagnosis, the medication history, the recommendation that you should not manage large financial decisions. Sign the disclaimer and walk away cleanly. It is the mature choice. I did not reach for the page. Instead, I looked at the header. The logo belonged to a clinic we had never used. The date on the evaluation was from 3 months ago, right after Ethan and I had argued about his mother's increasing involvement in our finances. I knew how medical records were supposed to look. I audited them for a living at the hospital system downtown. The formatting was off by 2 pixels. The signature block had been copied and pasted from another document. The alteration was sloppy, almost insulting in how little effort they had put into hiding it. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and careful. Just sign it, Lauren. Mom is only trying to protect the family assets. We can talk about everything else later. That was the moment the first crack appeared in the floor beneath me. He had chosen her side without even reading the papers himself. The man who had once told me the trust was our safety net was now asking me to sign it away because his mother said so. I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the tile. I am not signing anything until I have my own copy of every page and my own doctor reviews the records. Diane's laugh was short and sharp. Of course you would make this difficult. You always do. Ethan warned me you would fight anything that did not go your way. The lawyer, Marcus Caldwell, shifted in his seat but said nothing. He had been the family attorney for 20 years. He knew exactly whose side the bill was being sent to. I walked out of the office without looking back. Ethan did not follow me. I drove the 3 miles home through the perfectly manicured streets of the gated community past the security gate that had once made me feel safe. The house felt too quiet when I stepped inside. I went straight to the small office Ethan and I shared. His laptop was still open on the desk. He had left in a hurry that morning and forgotten to lock it. I should have walked away. Instead, I sat down and opened his email. The first message I saw was from Diane, sent 2 weeks earlier. The subject line read, "Re-Lauren situation. Final steps." I clicked it. The thread was long. Diane had written that the medical records needed one more adjustment before the trust meeting. Ethan had replied with a single line, "Do what you have to do. Just make it clean." There were attachments. One was a scanned copy of the same evaluation Diane had shown me in the office, but this version had different dates and a different doctor's name. Another email from 3 days ago contained a draft of the disclaimer I had been asked to sign. Ethan had already reviewed it and suggested one small change to the wording, so it sounded more like my idea. My chest felt tight. I kept scrolling. There were older messages going back almost a year where Diane outlined exactly how they would present the evidence of my instability to the trustee if I ever pushed back on her decisions about the house or the accounts. Ethan had never once defended me in any of those exchanges. He had only asked how to keep things quiet so the neighbors would not talk. I closed the laptop. The house was still silent. Outside, the late afternoon sun hit the community pool where families were gathering for the weekend. I could hear children laughing through the open window. Inside, everything I had believed about my marriage had just been rewritten by a handful of emails. I picked up my phone and called the one person who might believe me without needing proof first. My colleague at the hospital, Rebecca Torres, answered on the second ring. She listened while I told her what had just happened in the lawyer's office and what I had found on Ethan's computer. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Lauren, those records are fake. You know that better than anyone. If you want, I can have someone in the compliance department take a quiet look at the metadata, but you need to decide right now what you are willing to lose. I stared at the wall above the desk where Ethan and I had hung our wedding photo. In the picture, we were both smiling. I could not remember the last time I had seen that expression on his face in real life. Would you choose yourself when the person you trusted most turns against you like that? I told Rebecca I needed time to think. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet office until the light outside changed. Ethan still had not come home. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. It contained only one line, "Sign by tomorrow, or the next meeting will be in court." I did not answer. Instead, I opened my own laptop and started a new folder. I copied every email from Ethan's account that mentioned my name or the trust. I saved the altered medical evaluation Diane had shown me. Then I called the private investigator whose card I had kept from a work case 2 years earlier. Jake Morrison answered on the first ring. I told him I needed everything he could find on the Harper Family Trust and any previous versions of those medical records. He did not ask why, he just quoted a price and a timeline. When Ethan finally walked through the door at 9:30 that night, I was still sitting at the desk. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the open laptop and the printed email spread across the surface. "You went through my email," he said. It was not a question. I looked at him for the first time since the lawyer's office. "You helped her change medical records that do not even belong to me. You helped her lie to a trustee about my mental health so you could cut me out of a future you promised was ours." He did not deny it. He just stood there, one hand still on the doorframe, like he was deciding whether to come all the way into the room or turn around and leave again. "I did what I had to do to keep the peace," he said finally. "Mom was never going to accept you controlling any part of the money. This way, everyone wins." The laugh that came out of me sounded bitter even to my own ears. "Everyone except me." He took one step forward. "Sign the papers tomorrow and we can still fix this. We do not have to make it ugly." I stood up and gathered the printed emails into a neat stack. "You already made it ugly, Ethan. You just did not expect me to notice." I walked past him into the hallway. He did not try to stop me. I went into the guest room, closed the door, and locked it. For the first time in 6 years of marriage, I slept alone in our house. The next morning, I woke to another text from Diane. This one was longer. "The trustee meeting is at 10. If you are not there with the signed disclaimer, I will assume you have chosen the difficult path. Ethan agrees with me. Do not make this worse than it already is." I deleted the message without replying. Then I called Jake Morrison back and told him to move faster. I also called Rebecca and asked her to pull any hospital records that might exist under my name from the last year. She promised to have something by lunch. By 8:30, I was dressed and driving toward the lawyer's office again. This time I went alone. Marcus Caldwell looked surprised when I walked in without Ethan or Diane. I placed the folder of emails on his desk. "These were sent from my husband's account," I said. "I want them entered into the trust file before today's meeting. I also want a copy of every medical record that has been submitted regarding my fitness to manage financial decisions." Marcus glanced at the top email and his expression changed. He picked up his phone and made a call to the trustee's office. While he spoke, I sat in the same chair I had occupied the day before and waited. The door opened at 9:50. Diane walked in first, followed by Ethan. She stopped when she saw me already seated. "You are early," she said. The words were polite, the tone was not. I wanted to make sure the record was complete, I answered. Ethan sat down without looking at me. Diane took the chair across from mine and opened her own folder. She slid the same altered evaluation across the table again. "Sign it," she said. "We are done negotiating." I did not touch the paper. Instead, I opened my folder and removed the printed email thread. I placed it directly on top of the medical evaluation. "These emails show you and my husband discussing how to alter records that do not exist in any hospital database," I said. "They also show you planning to present them to the trustee as fact. I have already asked the trustee's office to compare the dates and signatures against the actual medical system. They should have the results any minute." Diane's face went very still. Ethan finally looked at me. For the first time since the day before, I saw something like fear in his eyes. The conference room door opened again. Marcus Caldwell stepped back inside, holding a printed email of his own. He looked at Diane, then at Ethan, then at me. "The trustee's office just confirmed the medical evaluation you submitted has metadata that does not match any record in the state system," he said quietly. "They are treating it as potential fraud. The meeting is postponed until they complete a full review." Diane stood up so fast her chair hit the wall. This is ridiculous. Lauren is clearly unstable. She is making accusations to cover her own greed. I stayed seated. My voice came out steady even though my heart was pounding. No, I said. I am just done letting you rewrite the truth. Diane stared at me for 3 long seconds. Then she turned and walked out of the room. Ethan hesitated for one breath before following her. The door closed behind them. Marcus Caldwell sat down across from me. Lauren, you need to decide how far you want to take this. Fraud on a trust document is serious, but proving it will mean dragging your marriage through a very public process. I looked at the stack of emails still on the table. The future Ethan had promised me had never been real. It had been a story they told to keep me compliant until they no longer needed the story. Now the story was falling apart in front of everyone who mattered. I am not signing anything I said, and I am not walking away quietly. Marcus nodded once, then we prepare for the next step. I left the office and drove back to the gated neighborhood. The security guard at the gate waved me through like it was any other morning. I parked in the driveway of the house I had once believed was the start of our permanent life together. Inside, the lights were off, Ethan's car was gone, a single sheet of paper had been slipped under the front door. It was another copy of the disclaimer this time with a note in Diane's handwriting across the top. Sign it or lose everything, your choice. I picked up the paper, folded it once, and dropped it into the trash can by the door. Then I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table where Ethan and I had eaten breakfast together for 6 years. My hands had stopped shaking. The silence in the house felt different now. It was no longer the silence of waiting for someone else to decide my future. It was the silence of someone who had finally chosen her own. I stayed at the kitchen table long after the water was gone. The house felt smaller than it had that morning, like the walls had moved closer while I was not looking. Ethan's car was still gone. Diane's note sat at the bottom of the trash can where I had dropped it. I picked up my phone and called Jake Morrison first. He answered, like he had been waiting. I already pulled the trust filings from the county clerk. There are 3 versions in the last 4 years. The one your husband's family is pushing now is the only one that removes the surviving spouse provision. The earlier drafts kept it in. Someone rewrote it after your wedding. I closed my eyes for a second. And the medical evaluation, fake. The doctor whose name is on it, Elena Vargas, retired 18 months ago. She never saw you. The signature was scanned from an old prescription pad and dropped onto a new form. I have the metadata. It was created on a computer in your mother-in-law's home office 3 weeks ago. I wrote the name down. Dr. Elena Vargas, another person whose name had been dragged into Diane's lie without her permission. Can you reach her? Already left a message. She's in Arizona now. If she calls back, I'll patch you in. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Rebecca Torres at the hospital. She picked up on the first ring. I ran your name through every system we have, she said, voice low. No anxiety diagnosis, no medication history, no evaluation from any clinic in the last 5 years. Whoever made that paper used a template from a different patient and changed the name. It is clean fraud. The word fraud sat between us for a moment. I had spent my career catching exactly this kind of thing for other people. Now it was my own life on the line, Rebecca. If I send you the email thread I found, can you forward it to the compliance department without putting your name on it? She hesitated only a second. Send it. I will make sure it lands on the right desk. Lauren, you know once this starts moving, it does not stop. Your husband is going to see this as war. He already chose the side, I said. I am just done pretending it was ever fair. After we hung up, I forwarded the emails. Then I sat in the dark kitchen and waited for Ethan to come home. He walked in at 11:15. The door clicked shut behind him. He stood in the entryway like he was testing the air. You did not sign, he said. I did not get up. You helped your mother forge medical records about me. You helped her change a trust that was supposed to protect both of us. And then you came home and asked me to make it easy for you. He dropped his keys on the counter. The sound was too loud in the quiet. Mom has always handled the family money. That is how it has always been. You knew that when we got married. I knew she liked control. I did not know you would help her lie about my health to steal what you promised was ours. He rubbed his face with both hands. It is not stealing if it was never really yours. The trust is Harper money. Mom just wants to make sure it stays in the family. The sarcasm came out before I could stop it. Right, because I stopped being family the second I stopped doing what she wanted. Ethan looked at me, then really looked. For a second, I saw the man I had married, the one who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sundays. Then it was gone. Sign the papers tomorrow, he said. If you do, we can still figure the rest out. If you do not, Mom is going to file for a conservatorship review. She already talked to the lawyer about it. I stood up slowly. You are going to let her try to have me declared incompetent so she can control the accounts. He did not answer. That was answer enough. I walked past him to the guest room again. This time I did not lock the door. I just closed it and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was Dr. Elena Vargas. I retired last year. I never treated a Lauren Bennett. Whoever used my name on that form committed fraud. I already called the medical board. You should too. I saved the message, then I forwarded it to Jake and to Marcus Caldwell. The pieces were moving faster now. Diane had counted on me backing down the way I always had when she pushed. This time, I was not backing down. The next morning, the trustee's office called. Marcus Caldwell was on the line with them. They wanted a formal statement from me about the emails and the forged evaluation. I gave it over the phone while I stood at the kitchen window watching the neighborhood wake up. A woman I barely knew from 2 streets over was walking her dog past our house. She glanced at the windows like she already knew something was wrong. By 10 o'clock, Diane had left 3 voicemails. The last one was short. Ethan told me what you did. You're making this so much worse than it needs to be. The entire board of the community association is going to hear about your instability if you keep this up. Think about what that will do to your reputation here. I deleted the message and called Jake again. She is threatening to go to the homeowners board, I told him. Can she actually do that? She can try. But if the emails and the forged records go public first, she looks like the unstable one. I pulled the older trust versions. The original document from your father-in-law's first marriage had a different beneficiary structure. There was a provision for a child from a previous relationship. It was removed in the 2022 rewrite. Quietly, my stomach dropped. Ethan has a half-sibling. Half-sister? Sophia Rivera. She lives in Portland now. She was written out when she was 22. I am still digging into why, but the fact that the current version of the trust pretends she never existed is another layer of the lie they built. I sat down at the table again. Another person whose name had been erased so Diane could keep the story clean. I wondered if Sophia Rivera even knew the trust had once included her. Jake's voice came back through the phone. Lauren, there is more. One of the emails in that chain was forwarded to an outside address 2 days ago. Someone outside the family has copies of everything Diane and Ethan wrote about you. The air in the kitchen felt thinner. Who I do not have the name yet. But the forward happened from your husband's account at 11:47 p.m. the night before your meeting. Either he sent it or someone with access to his email did. I thought about Ethan standing in the doorway the night before keys, still in his hand. He had looked tired. He had also looked like a man who had already decided which side kept him safer. Keep digging, I told Jake, and find Sophia Rivera. I want to know if she knows any of this. After I hung up, I went into the bedroom Ethan and I had shared and pulled a suitcase from the top of the closet. I did not pack everything. I packed enough for a week, then I carried it to the guest room and set it by the door. I was not leaving yet, but I was no longer pretending this house was still a home we were building together. Ethan came home early that afternoon. He found me in the kitchen with the suitcase visible through the open guest room door. He stopped in the middle of the room. "You are leaving," he said. I am choosing not to live in a house where my husband helps his mother forge documents to cut me out of a future he promised me, I answered. There's a difference. He sat down at the table without being asked. For the first time since the lawyer's office, he looked like he might actually be afraid of what came next. Mom filed the conservatorship paperwork this morning, he said quietly. She said it was the only way to protect the assets while you are having your episode. The hearing is in 10 days. I felt the floor tilt under me for half a second. Then the anger came back sharp and clean. She is using a fake medical record to try to take legal control of my life. And you're standing here telling me about it like it is weather. He rubbed his temples. If you just sign the disclaimer, she will withdraw it. She already said so. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I laughed once short and bitter. You want me to sign away my rights so your mother will stop trying to have me declared incompetent. That is not fixing anything. That is surrender. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marcus Caldwell. I put him on speaker. The trustee just received an anonymous packet, he said. It contains the full email chain plus the forged evaluation and a note pointing out the metadata mismatch. They are treating it as a formal complaint. The conservatorship filing is on hold pending their investigation. Lauren, whoever sent that packet, just changed the entire timeline. Ethan went very still across the table. I looked at him while I answered Marcus. I did not send it, I said, but I am not sorry it exists. After the call ended, Ethan stood up. His face had gone pale. You need to call Mom, he said, right now. Before this gets out to the neighbors, I stayed seated. No, I am done calling your mother to manage her feelings. She made this mess. She can sit in it. He left without another word. The front door closed harder than it needed to. I stayed at the table and watched the afternoon light move across the floor. Somewhere in the gated community, Diane was probably already on the phone with someone on the homeowners board, spinning her version of the story. Somewhere else, an anonymous person had copies of every lie she and Ethan had written about me. My phone rang again. This time it was Jake. I found Sophia Rivera, he said. She is willing to talk, and Lauren, she has her own copy of the original trust, the one that included her. She never knew it had been changed until I called. I closed my eyes. The promised future had never been real. It had been a story they told to keep the people they needed compliant. Now the story was cracking open in every direction at once. Set up the call, I told him. I want to hear what she has to say. I ended the call and looked at the suitcase by the guest room door. I had chosen myself in the lawyer's office when I refused to sign. I had chosen myself again when I packed that bag. Every choice since then had been the same one repeated. The house was quiet again, but this time the quiet felt like the space before something larger broke open. I did not know yet what Sophia Rivera would tell me. I did not know how far Diane would go once she realized the emails had escaped her control. I only knew that the version of my life I had been living was already gone, and I was not going back to pick up the pieces they wanted me to keep. The call with Sophia Rivera came that evening while I was still sitting at the kitchen table. Jake patched her in without any small talk. Her voice was steady but tired, the voice of someone who had already lived through the version of Diane Harper I was only now meeting. I was 22 when they cut me out, she said, my father's first marriage. Diane convinced him the trust needed to be simplified after I asked too many questions about where the money was actually going. She had the lawyer rewrite it, so I disappeared from the paperwork. When I pushed back, she started the same game she is playing with you. Now quiet suggestions that I was unstable, that I could not handle responsibility. My father believed her. I walked away because fighting her cost more than I had left to give. I listened without interrupting. Every sentence lined up with the pattern I had been living inside for 6 years. The promised future had never been real. It had always been a story Diane told to keep the people she needed close and compliant until she no longer needed them. After the call ended, I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Marcus Caldwell. I attached everything: Jake's findings, Dr. Elena Vargas's statement, Sophia's account of the original trust, and the full email chain. I wrote one line at the top: I am no longer willing to protect anyone's version of the truth except my own. I hit send at 11:47 p.m., the same minute Ethan had forwarded the original chain 2 nights earlier. The next morning, the gated community felt different. Or maybe I was the one who had changed. I drove through the security gate and noticed the guard watching me a second longer than usual. By noon, Marcus called. The trustee's office received your package and the anonymous one that arrived yesterday, he said. They are treating both as formal complaints. The conservatorship filing has been withdrawn, pending a full forensic review of the trust documents and the medical evaluation. Diane Harper has been asked to provide original source documents for every change made since 2022. She is not answering their calls. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Rebecca. She told me the compliance department had already flagged the forged evaluation and opened an internal inquiry. Dr. Elena Vargas had filed her own report with the medical board that morning. By 3 o'clock, Diane had left 6 voicemails and 3 texts. I did not listen to any of them. I forwarded the entire thread to Marcus and asked him to handle all future communication through legal channels. Then I blocked her number. Ethan came home at 6. He found me in the guest room, zipping the suitcase closed. He stood in the doorway like he had the night before, except this time he looked smaller. Mom is losing it, he said. She says the trustee is threatening to dissolve the whole trust if she does not cooperate. She wants you to call her. She says she will drop everything if you just sign the disclaimer and agree to counseling. I lifted the suitcase off the bed. I already told you no. I am not negotiating with someone who tried to have me declared incompetent using forged records. He stepped into the room. If you leave, she is going to make sure everyone in this neighborhood knows what you did. The board already has questions. She is telling them you are having some kind of breakdown and dragging the family through court. I set the suitcase down and looked at him. The sarcasm came out clean and sharp. Of course she is. That has always been her first move when someone stops doing what she wants. Make them look crazy so no one listens to what they are actually saying. Ethan's shoulders dropped. I do not know how to fix this anymore. You cannot fix it, I said, because you helped build it. The only thing left is to stop pretending it was ever going to protect both of us. He did not argue. He just stood there while I carried the suitcase past him and set it by the front door. I turned back once. I am filing for legal separation tomorrow, I told him. You can tell your mother I will not be attending any more family gatherings. Not the holidays, not the birthdays, not the quiet dinners where she rewrites history over dessert. I am done. He nodded once like the words had finally landed. Then he walked into the kitchen and sat down at the table where we had eaten breakfast for 6 years. I closed the door behind me without slamming it. I drove to a small apartment complex just outside the gate. The unit was smaller than our guest room, but it was mine. I unpacked the suitcase, made the bed with the sheets I had brought, and sat on the edge of the mattress. The quiet here was different. No one was waiting for me to manage their emotions. No one was rewriting documents in the next room. The breakdown came later that night. I had been holding everything together since the lawyer's office, steady voice, clear decisions. No tears in front of Ethan or Diane or Marcus. Alone in the new apartment with the door locked and the phone on silent, it finally broke. I sat on the floor of the tiny kitchen and cried until my chest hurt. Not because I missed Ethan, because I had spent 6 years believing a story that had been designed to keep me small and useful. The grief was for the version of myself who had trusted the promises. When the crying stopped, the quiet came back. This time it did not feel like waiting. It felt like space. The next morning I called Jake and asked him to keep working with Sofia Rivera. She deserved to know the full picture. I called Rebecca and thanked her for standing in the gap when I needed someone who would not lie to me. I called Marcus and told him to proceed with the separation filing and to copy the trustee on every document. Then I sent one final text to Ethan before I blocked his number too. I chose myself. I hope someday you can say the same. 3 weeks later, the trustee's investigation concluded. The forged medical evaluation was thrown out. The 2022 rewrite of the trust was flagged for review because of the emails showing intent to exclude beneficiaries without proper process. Sofia Rivera's original claim was reinstated on the record. Diane Harper was removed as co-trustee pending a full accounting. The conservatorship attempt disappeared quietly. No one in the gated community ever received the dramatic story Diane had threatened to tell. The emails had already done the talking. I did not go back for any of it. I did not attend the emergency board meeting where the Homeowners Association discussed community standards. I did not answer the single message Ethan sent through Marcus asking if we could talk. I did not return to the house. The family gatherings that had once felt like obligations became something that happened to other people. I was no longer invited, and I no longer wanted to be. 6 months after I signed the separation papers, I stood in the doorway of a slightly larger apartment across town. Rebecca helped me carry in the last box. Jake had sent a short email the week before letting me know Sofia had received her portion of the corrected trust distribution. He did not ask if I wanted any of it. He already knew the answer. I had chosen silence when it protected me. I had chosen boundaries when the people who should have loved me tried to rewrite my reality instead. The cost was real. I had lost the marriage I thought I was building, the neighborhood I had called home, and the version of family I had once defended. But I had kept the one thing Diane and Ethan could never take without my permission, my own name on my own story. Self-respect does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives in the quiet moment when you realize you would rather eat alone in a small apartment than sit at a table where your presence is conditional on your silence. It arrives when you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided you are the problem. It arrives when you look at the life they tried to force you into and choose instead the smaller life that is actually yours. I still work at the hospital. I still audit records and catch the small lies people try to slip into official documents. The difference is that now I catch them for myself first. The gated neighborhood is behind me. The promises that were never real are behind me. The version of me who waited for someone else to choose me is behind me. Some nights, the loneliness still arrives like a familiar visitor. I let it sit for a while. Then I remember the kitchen table where I finally said no and the quiet apartment where I learned how to live with the answer. Thank you for listening to my story. Would you have kept fighting inside their version of the truth, or would you have chosen yourself when the lies finally surfaced?